Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Monterey Bay Aquarium's Kelp Forest exhibit webcam. My name is Kristen. I'm part of the staff here at the aquarium. It's 10 o'clock in the morning, and that means I'm joined by our diver, Patrick, to bring some food into these very hungry fish. And when Patrick is ready, he'll have his microphone chime in to join us.
Hey, how's it going there, Kristen?
It's awesome on my side. You look like you have a bunch of really excited fish.
Yeah, I'm very popular right now here. You can see all of the fish are swarming. The sharks are showing up. It is brunch time here in the Kelp Forest exhibit there, Kristen. I just want to say good morning to you. Good morning to Anthony hanging out over there on the bench, making sure that we got sound. And hello, everybody tuning in online on our website, on Twitch, on YouTube, on Periscope and Twitter, and on Facebook. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Again, my name's Patrick. We got Kristen over here, and it's time to feed some fish. Let's get going.
All right, we've got a kind of different assortment for brunch than you and I might eat, Patrick. So how about you introduce us to what is on the menu this morning? I think I see some different food items in your bucket today.
Yeah, it seems like we got a little bit more of a smorgasbord, or it's considered seafood, a little bit of a chopino in here, basically whatever kind of seafood we seem to have in there. We've got a little bit of a salmon that's going to be fed out here in a little bit, but right now what I'm trying to do is, just had a shark run right into me. We also have this big bull kelp plant that's going to be hanging out here next to me, so this should be a lot of fun during the feeding show.
Yeah.
My bubbles are creating a Venturi effect that is pulling that kelp in closer to me, so if you see me in the kelp there during the show, that's going to be a little bit of a new intro. Here you go. Come on. There.
I was just thinking the long fronds on that bull kelp really kind of make it look like you've got some nice mermaid hair going on.
Yeah, and
so wavy.
That is something about bull kelp. It's really, so bull kelp, Nereocystis lutskiana. Here you go. There you go. All right, the sharks are really hungry this morning. We've got a little bit of warmer water near the surface of the bay. Down deeper, the water in the Monterey Bay, Kristen's been in the lower 50s and even the upper 40s. But near the surface, there's been some pretty warm water around 60 degrees. And when that happens, you can get a little bit more active fish because they basically go off the temperature of the water around them for their internal body temperature.
Oh, well, I'll give you a second to get some food out to those fish then.
Yeah, I gotta switch up what I'm doing here. Gotta make sure that everybody wears my small food.
Yeah.
Okay, I've just been nipped by so many opali, which are the fish with the white spot on their back and sort of the blue eyeball there. Everybody's very hungry. You can see, I don't know if you folks have been watching these shows over the quarantine, but you can see just how much more active all of the animals are when the water is just that little bit warmer.
Yeah, it's a pretty big contrast to earlier. We actually had James, one of our divers, in here talking about how we collected the bull kelp. And for those of you who weren't there for last week's show, we actually are able to pick this up when it gets ripped off from the currents drifting across the surface. So we're bringing it right in from the ocean outside, some of the bull kelp that's been ripped up. And I am having to say, Patrick, we're pretty lucky that we get to see it in this long, flowing, almost mermaid hair look, because it's also really popular with the opalies that you were talking about getting picked at. They love to pick at the bull kelp.
Exactly right. Yeah, so, in the kelp forest, there are so many different players. And the algae, during this feeding show, we got this feeding frenzy here. We often talk about those animals, but the giant kelp behind me and the bull kelp next to me, there are some of the main organisms that define the kelp forest habitat by not only creating food for other organisms. Come on, Sharky. There you go. Yes. So they're not only creating food for other organisms, they're also creating the habitat itself by creating places for them to hide. I literally have a shrimp in your mouth, buddy. You got to help me out. Okay. So, yeah, so these these plants that you see there behind me, so critical. I just wanted to point out that bull kelp, like you were mentioning, we're very fortunate to have it because it's an annual plant, annual kelp. So it grows to be over 50 feet long, all in one season. Then it gets ripped out in the winter time, whereas the giant kelp can last many years in the same location. So we try to put it in here when we can.
You know, you were talking about it providing shelter, and we're getting a really good example of that because the kelp perch are using the kelp next to you to tuck in, get really comfortable, and get really close to your buckets. Normally, we don't see that.
Right.
And we can see those perch, how they match the color of the bull kelp. I know we actually have lots of perch in this exhibit, and one of our guests online was wondering what are some of your favorite perch of the species we have in here?
Oh, some of my favorite types of perch?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's hard to choose because, as we've mentioned on a few of these shows, Monterey is the surf perch capital of the world. More species of surf perch in our waters than anywhere else. What I will say is that I really enjoy, so this is a striped perch here. This is a rainbow perch right here, another striped perch with a rainbow perch. There's my black perch. The black perch that have these big vertical bars on them, they're some of my favorites to see out here simply because they are usually very curious and kind of stay close to you, but I've seen them when they're doing their mating behaviors with each other, and they're just gorgeous, and the male kind of dances around the female, and you can kind of get lost in watching that. You know, these perch have a lot of character, a lot of personality. If you folks are regulars to the Kelp Forest cam, you might sometimes see some of these perch doing that sort of mating dance, that sort of ritual with each other, and I just remember fondly one of those black perch at the Monterey Breakwater trying to impress his lady, and just kind of lost track of time with the sun going through the kelp. It's really beautiful stuff.
You know, we're seeing those perch come really close too, and also our leopard sharks.
Yes.
You know, these fish, do they know you personally? I mean, they seem to know you're the food delivery, not each other.
Yeah. So we have these animals pretty well trained to recognize where the food is going to be coming from. Something that I'm sure all of the parents out there have figured out during this quarantine is that most animals are very food motivated, including young children, and so you can kind of train everybody up. And so what's happened here is that these fish do have a lot of natural food in this exhibit that they can go after, and they certainly do, especially when there's beautiful bull kelp like this. But they also know that it's easier to come up to the food bucket, and so they all kind of recognize they can smell it in the water, and they learn over time, hey, you know, I could probably try to go forage for myself in here, but also eventually there will be these magical bits of food that show up, and so you can see just how the fish know exactly where to go to come grab a meal. They were all spread out before I came in, and then they all came over to mob, and the leopard sharks are the same way. Once they've had their fill, they'll avoid this area and go back to doing what they were doing in the Kelp Forest. This is also how we keep the peace in the Kelp Forest, because if everyone's coming over to grab food from me, they're not going to try to eat each other. And that's just basic Aquarium 101. Make sure everyone's well fed so they don't go after each other.
Yeah, you know, that's a great way to keep the peace in lots of other places. You know, college dorms, make sure everyone's well fed, everyone's happier.
Yep, you definitely want to over-purchase on the pizza. If you under-purchase, things can change very quickly.
Well, so it seems like our animals definitely at least know you as the food diver. Now, normally we have our divers coming in here twice a day, but Patrick, I do know our food schedule has changed a little bit.
Yes.
So how often are these fish eating now? They seem really hungry.
Yeah, so they're getting 2-3 times a week here with divers coming in and hand feeding them. Well, there's that piece of salmon going by right now. But they are being fed every day the same amount of food that they were getting, but a lot of it is being thrown in as well or brought in at different times and fed in different areas of the exhibit. So actually, if you look up to the top of the exhibit, Kristen, we might start to see some of the krill that we brought over there for the anchovies and the other smaller mouths that might be hanging out behind me, not coming over to the frenzy. So they're still getting plenty of food, but you can see when they're not being hand-fed twice a day like they were now, where it's just a couple of times a week, some of the regulars are kind of a little bit more frenzied to get back to their restaurant, which is not uncommon. You can probably probably see it with your favorite restaurant yourself. Once it reopens, everybody's out the front door in line ready to grab their meal.
Well, it must feel nice to be the favorite restaurant. You know, the leopard sharks have been really popular here in our dive feedings, coming right up to everybody. But I know they're not the only sharks in the aquarium. A lot of our guests online were asking about some of the other sharks we've taken care of here. We've had great white sharks we've worked with. We've got 7-gill sharks in the shark cam. What are some of your other favorites that we've worked with here at the aquarium?
Yeah, if you folks head over to the Shark Cam, which is live on YouTube every single day, and on our website, the Shark Cam has 7-gill sharks, leopard sharks, spiny dogfish, bat rays, big skates, sometimes an angel shark swimming by. So lots of different shark species there, but my favorite at the moment, Kristen, is the angel shark, not only because at the aquarium she's a little bit of a mysterious enigma where you kind of try to guess where she is every day. She moves around at night, but also because out in the bay there have been so many sightings of angel sharks by divers this year. In particular, I've been out diving recently looking at the squid that are in the Monterey Bay as I try to get this leopard shark to recognize the shrimp is coming from above. There you go. So I've got this little piece of market squid right here, and there has been a mating aggregation of market squid over in Carmel that I've been going to see, and there's an angel shark that actually hangs out right next to where the squid eggs are, and every time that we've seen it with squid around, it doesn't do anything, presumably because it's so full of squid already. In fact, a friend of mine, Phil, saw a squid dancing on the angel shark and kind of poking at its eye, and the angel shark did nothing. So food coma angel shark is my current favorite shark species. It's a subspecies of angel shark. It's one that's been feeding on squid for a long time.
Now, the aquarium does do research on sharks in the wild, including great white sharks. Well, we have had 6 here at the aquarium as part of our research. You can find out more about this after. Head to the Monterey Bay Aquarium website, hit our animals tab, hit our blog, and you can read more about some of that research that we're doing, seeing what sharks in the wild, just like Patrick was talking about seeing those sharks in the wild.
Yeah, and there are lots of folks that are also seeing those great whites out in the wild. The young great whites are currently very visible over off of Aptos, Santa Cruz, Watsonville area, Pajaro Dunes area. Those young sharks are thought to be here in the Monterey Bay because it's so cold north and south of the bay right now. Like I was mentioning, the sea surface, you might get 60-degree water, but down deeper and where there's upwelling, it might be 40-something. And so north and south of the Monterey Bay at the moment is some very cold water. And so you have these young great whites that are hanging out north of the bay, near Santa Cruz, near Aptos area. And that water there is usually about 60 degrees all the time, so they're kind of hanging out over there to stay warm as very small sharks. And so the term for them for the sharks is they're temperature refugees, hanging out over there waiting for the water to get warmer north and south so they can start moving away from the bay.
Yeah, if any of you have had a chance to visit us here in Monterey in person, you'll know that normally our beaches are not the place to lay out and be warm. So it's great that those young white sharks who really need those warm water have somewhere warmer they can take refuge at. Now, to transition the topic back to those squid, I know you were talking about how much squid we have in the bay right now.
Yes.
We're feeding squid. Obviously, squid are a part of this habitat, but are we able to keep any cephalopods in the kelp forest itself?
Ow! Sorry, I just had a half moon bite my finger going for the squid.
Speaking of squid, they're very popular.
Yeah, they're extremely popular, Kristen, absolutely. Sorry, was the question if we can have cephalopods in the kelp forest exhibit? Is that,
yeah.
So you can certainly have cephalopods in the wild kelp forest. Not only in our area will you find red octopus very commonly down in Southern California. In the kelp forest, you'll find 2-spot octopus very commonly. And then up north, you'll find giant Pacific octopus in that colder water. So cephalopods are common in the kelp forest. You might sometimes see squid near those areas, but just as in the wild and here at the aquarium, it's tough being a cephalopod because you're food for so many things. And so the cephalopods hide often during the day and come out at night when the predators might not be able to find them as easily. If we were to have any cephalopods in this exhibit, I mean, as best as we could do, we probably wouldn't be able to have them here for too long before the cephalopods would want out. There's so many different mouths in here that would want some of that fresh calamari, some of that octopus. But in the wild, you certainly find a lot of them. And if we had a giant Pacific octopus in here, probably be pretty good. But then we have the reverse problem, where if you have a giant Pacific octopus in with some of these larger animals that they eat, the octopus would start doing the feeding. So really, we keep the peace at some points by keeping animals separate. That's also why in this exhibit there are no lingcod. The lingcod are actually behind you, Kristen, over there. If we had a lingcod in here, we would have far fewer fish in the Kelp Forest exhibit. You don't want to have the lions in with the goats, as it were.
Yeah, so we definitely make sure that we have private quarters for all those animals that have extra needs, even if that need is wanting to hunt their neighbors. So we do have octopus here at the aquarium, but if there's any in the Kelp Forest, they probably came in unbeknownst to us with some of the kelp coming in from the wild.
Yeah, we have had that story happen where a rock was brought in from the Monterey Bay that had a little tiny octopus in it that grew up in our exhibit hall for a year with nobody knowing that it was around. But one night there was one of our security staff walking around that found what looked like a banana peel on the floor. Walked up to the banana peel. The banana peel was in fact a living cephalopod crawling around, and picked it up in a bucket, called the appropriate staff, and they found it, realized that it had been growing up in that exhibit that has the open top to it to show you the shale reef and the beautiful community there. And the discovery of this octopus solved the mystery of the disappearing hermit crabs from that exhibit, where we thought potentially visitors might be picking them up, taking them home. They might have, disappeared somewhere else. But once we found that octopus, it made a whole lot more sense why we couldn't keep hermit crabs and snails in there very well.
Yeah, we do have that great connection with the water outside, so it's bringing not only the temperature, but sometimes those animals. And I know because of a lot of our animals are eating small things, like if you're a small octopus or a small fish, you've got lots of teeny tiny food in your bucket. So some of our guests were noticing the really small bits of food that you're getting for our smallest mouths. What are some of the things that we're able to feed the littlest guys?
Yeah, so there's some chopped up bits of the larger food. So there's some chopped up squid, chopped up fish in there, chopped up clam, but there's also some krill in there. And krill are these shrimp-like organisms you may have heard about, like so. And krill are really critical components of the food web out here in the Monterey Bay. Whales love to eat krill, obviously, but also anchovies. Anything with a mouth big enough to eat krill is eating krill at some point. And that krill is really one of the big indicators that the food web is starting to be complete, and that we'll start seeing the big whales, like blue whales coming to the bay. We've got humpback whales in the bay at the moment. That's right. And we've also got sightings recently of Baird's beaked whales, which feed on squid down deeper, and those squid are eating the fish that eat the fish that eat the krill. So krill is one of those good indicators to know that the bay has had that full cycle of productivity there. So that's some of the smaller stuff that we're feeding there.
Awesome. Well, it does look like you are almost out of your small stuff and all the other food.
Nearly so, yeah. Kristen, I did want, before we leave, just because we do have this bull kelp here, I did just want to talk about an interesting feature of the bull kelp.
It has like patches.
Yeah, I don't know if you folks can see there on the cam. Hopefully you can. I think Curtis is up there. But this particular part, you can see how there are these patches here in the middle. Those are the reproductive parts of the bull kelp. And in here is where they're going to have a whole bunch of spores that are eventually going to help form the next generation of bull kelp. So when you're looking at a giant bull kelp plant like this, or the giant kelp behind me, those are the sporophytes. So they're producing these spores. There's another type or another body shape of these organisms in their reproductive cycle called the gametophytes that produces the gametes, like male and female gametes. But this here is filled with spores. And you can see over here on this blade that there is a gap. There's an opening here that happened on this blade, and that is where the sorus, it's called, where the spores are, the sorus popped right here, and you can see that gap. So all of those spores came out of that kelp blade right there. So there's some reproduction happening there in the wild and in the exhibit here. But so this hole where I can put my hand is where there used to be a sorus, and multiple sorus are called sori. And so I just wanted to point out that this right here is a site for sore eyes.
Ha ha ha.
I know it was a long walk to get to that punchline, but I know Anthony appreciated it. Yeah, that's right. Okay. So anyway, just wanted to point that out since we have this bull kelp right here. Really cool to see if you see the sorus and these sori on the blades, they eventually pop and spread out the spores into the water. That's how you get more bull kelp.
Yeah, I know our Chris Kelsey, who you've done lots of online interviews with, has been very excited in the past when our bull kelp were able to reproduce in the exhibit. But I have one quick question about those sorus. We've got lots of guests at home who are probably been watching this kelp cam with with their schools and everything. Would you pronounce that the same as like a dinosaur? Is that how you're pronouncing that?
Sorus, S-O-R-U-S. So almost like a saur, S-A-U-R, which I believe that refers to lizard, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so not quite like a dinosaur, but certainly if you are an opali that's eating sauruses, you're dying on sauruses. So, got it. Nailed it. All right.
All right, that's so awesome. You know, it's been awesome to hang out with you, the Hungry Fish, and I have to say the bubbles have actually been carrying some of the bull kelp up now.
Oh, great.
So
Yeah.
now the kelp looks twice as long. It's like you've got giant Rapunzel hair this time.
Yeah, I made the mistake of being too close to it. I was pulling it in. The Venturi effect is some physics over there for you kids watching at home, where I was accelerating the water with my bubbles, thus creating some high pressure and low pressure gradients in the water, and that was sucking the kelp over to the window where I was. But if I'm down below it, now I'm able to get the kelp up and away from me. But you can see, I mean, just how impressive this plant is. It's, you know, we talk about how tall the giant kelp can be. The giant kelp can be 200 feet long, but it's growing from 70 feet deep in the Monterey Bay at its deepest point. So you've got 130 feet of kelp that can be sitting on the surface in the canopy. And when you're looking at bull kelp, I mean, just look at how long these blades are. This kelp was probably about 50 feet long when it was out in the wild, and you can just see how long all of these blades are. I mean,
Yeah.
they go almost all the way down to the bottom of the exhibit, Kristen. And the other thing we should point out with the bull kelp is that it has just one big bulb in it, just the one big float in there, the nematocyst, filled with gas. So if you're ever on the beach, you can sometimes find some younger bull kelp, and you can kind of pop those, and you'll see that there's just so much gas in there that's buoying these things up. Really an amazing sight out in the bay. But I will point out that one time when I was doing some sea otter research out in Big Sur, I stared at a head of bull kelp that I thought was my sea otter for about an hour, until I realized that my bull kelp was not swimming away, and my auto tracker was saying that it was. So just something to point out there, bull kelp can be very difficult to tell apart from a sea otter from a long way away with the big head sticking out.
Well, if any of our guests want to move on to checking out the kelp, the bay cam, see if you can spot any of the bull kelp heads out there trying to trick you into thinking they're sea otters. We're also going to be feeding our open sea exhibit next at 11 o'clock, since we have run out of food for our kelp forest animals.
Yep, it's all done there. So I just want to thank you so much, Kristen, for tuning in. Thank you, Anthony, for getting the sound going. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in there online. If you'd like to keep supporting the aquarium while we're closed, we do hope to see you again soon. We don't have that reopening date yet, but in the Twitch chat, you can see different areas where you can donate. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our Twitch channel, All of those things are really important to help us continue to offer things digitally while we're closed. And you can also purchase some masks for yourself from the aquarium if you want to on our online gift store. So a few different ways you can support us while we keep preparing to welcome you back very soon.
Yeah, if you're able to, making a donation helps to take care of the animals you see while we're closed. We're so lucky we can connect with you online, but really we can't wait to see you again in person. Patrick,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for joining me
Thank
today.
you, Kristen. That was super fun. Thank you, Anthony. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for watching. Hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. See you again soon at the Monterey Bay Aquarium.